Why do body comedies still work and why do we keep coming back to them? Today, I would like to invite you on an adventure into the world of body comedies. It's one of those subgenres that keeps popping up among my favorite films, movies that made me admire certain actors and rewatch the same titles countless times. First, I would like to talk about a bit of the history and inner workings of body comedies, then I will dive into some standout examples, focusing mainly on the genre's golden run in the 1980s and 90s. Some of my all-time favorite films are body comedies. When everything clicks, it's pure joy to watch two usually opposite characters try to work things out, bicker, clash, and ultimately make up. And we can keep watching them again and again, even when we know every little detail of the story, because at that point, it's no longer about the plot, it's about these guys. So what are the core ingredients of a body comedy? At its heart, it usually comes down to this: a mismatched pair is forced to work together in order to achieve a common goal. That's the basic idea, the foundation everything else is built on. The so-called container is also crucial. Why and how do they have to work together? Is it a case, a road trip, or a really bad weekend? This setup becomes a catalyst for conflict and comedy, creating situations where a great pairing can truly shine. The characters also need to exist on the same moral level. One of them can't be outright evil, because then we automatically side with the good one. We have to like them both, want to spend time with them, and enjoy simply being in their presence. The screenplay needs to leave room for them to just live and interact, and those moments should make us want to be there with them, sharing the experience. It's also important that the characters grow. They have to become better people in order to realize that what seemed like a mismatch is actually a perfect match, and that realization is what allows them to finally come together in the end. But all of that lives on the page, and none of it really matters if one crucial ingredient is missing: chemistry. You can immediately feel when it works. The scenes flow naturally, as if these two were born to work or argue together. They interrupt each other, react instinctively, and share the same energy in completely different ways. Like yin and yang, they complete each other. We can trace the roots of body comedies all the way back to the 1920s and 30s with duos like Laurel and Hardy or Abbott and Costello. These films might lack the kind of character development we expect today, but that was never really the point. The mismatch, the physical comedy, and the perfectly timed reactions already worked beautifully, and most importantly, the magic was there. Moving into the 1960s, we get the iconic pairing of Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau with films like The Odd Couple and The Fortune Cookie. Both are textbook examples of the format.
Not here.
Yes, he's here. Yes.
How's she sound? She worried? Huh? What's she saying? She crying? Is she crying? Does she want to speak? I don't want to talk to her.
Filled with all the core elements that define a great body comedy. Around the same time, Lemmon also teamed up with Tony Curtis in Some Like It Hot, another classic built on contrast, rhythm, and chemistry. Lemmon and Matthau even managed to carry that same energy into the 1990s with Grumpy Old Man and its sequel, and somehow it worked like a charm all over again. Robert Redford and Paul Newman were another iconic pairing, creating legendary films like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting. Both were larger-than-life stars in their own right, but when they shared the screen, none of that mattered.
What are you doing? Stealing your woman? Take her. Take her.
No one was trying to steal the spotlight. It's simply a joy to watch them exist together, playing off each other with effortless ease. The 1970s and 80s then gave us one of the most beloved pairing of all time, Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. Films like Silver Streak, Stir Crazy, and later See No Evil, Hear No Evil are perfect examples of chemistry doing the heavy lifting.
All right, 200. I can't live on less than that.
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to you, you prick. What do you say?
Why don't you look me in the eye and say that?
I would if I could, but I can't. I'm blind.
You're blind.
Yes, I'm blind. How can I have the job?
I had no idea. I'm sorry.
Now you know. Can I get the job?
Everything clicks. You can watch these movies and genuinely hope that, somewhere in a parallel universe, these two are still friends, meeting up regularly and getting into new adventures.
So tell me, how's it feel to be handicapped? I always wanted to ask you that.
I'm not handicapped. I have you.
I'm not going to dive too deep into these two guys right now, because they honestly deserve their own video. Bud Spencer and Terence Hill, two Italian actors who became massive international stars, especially outside the US, by repeatedly playing mismatched partners forced to work together, constantly bickering, poking at each other, and eventually forming a bond, or at least a mutual respect. The formula clearly worked. They start together in 17 films, and while the overall quality varies, there are some real gems in that filmography. And truth to be told, when these two are on the screen together, the story almost doesn't matter. It's just simply way too much fun to watch them. There is one more film from this era I want to highlight, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
I thought you were the Heat.
Do I look like Heat?
You look like one crazy son of a bitch for a preacher, I'll tell you that.
Clint Eastwood had plenty of partners throughout the Dirty Harry films, but they were never his equals, always temporary, always disposable. Here though, he finally finds a real match in Jeff Bridges. Eastwood's cold, distant and gruff Thunderbolt bounces perfectly off Bridges' easygoing, curious and almost carefree Lightfoot.
God damn it, I like you, that's all. I thought we were getting to be friends.
The film itself plays like a road movie adventure, full of car chases, long silences and piercing stares. And the tragic ending is a rare and unexpected move for the genre, but that's exactly why it stands out. Not every body story needs a happy ending, and this one proves how powerful the formula can be when it takes a darker turn. Now we get to the main event, the 1980s and 1990s, the golden era of buddy comedies. But before diving into cops and law enforcement, we need to talk about a couple more films.
Deal.
Good.
Trading Places is a perfect example of an extreme class and personality mismatch. Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy are thrown into a forced partnership through outside manipulation, and the comedy is driven almost entirely by contrast. The plot itself is fairly simple, and that's fine, because the relationship becomes the real emotional payoff. Another legendary duo is John Candy as Steve Martin in Planes, Trains and Automobiles.
Is this a coincidence or what? Have a seat.
This is easily the greatest example of a perfect buddy comedy arc set within a classic road trip structure. What makes it so special is how boldly it shifts our perception of the characters. The film actually changes who we root for multiple times.
You're not a very tolerant person.
Look, you've been under my skin since New York, starting with ripping off my cab.
God, you're a tight ass.
How'd you like a mouthful of teeth?
Something that's incredibly risky, because it can easily break the magic. Here, it does the opposite. It adds depth.
I'm an easy target. Yeah, you're right. I talk too much. I also listen too much. I could be a cold-hearted cynic like you. But I don't like to hurt people's feelings.
The movie slowly peels back the characters, lets us understand their motivations and teaches us to like them despite their flaws. At the exact same pace, the characters learn to understand each other. That creates a real bond between us and them. John Hughes was a master at blending humor with emotion, and this is his buddy comedy masterpiece. Honestly, it's just comforting to know that Neil Page and Dale Griffiths probably end up sitting at a table together many more times after the credits roll. Before Lethal Weapon, before Beverly Hills Cop, there was one film that set the entire era in motion and defined the buddy cop formula: 48 Hours. This movie doesn't just add jokes, it completely reprograms the genre. These are two equals, neither is better than the other.
Yeah, I didn't get you out so you could go on a trim hunt. Stop moaning.
You know, speaking of moaning, my stomach is starting to growl. You better go get something
We
to
eat
eat.
when I say we eat.
You know, that's bullshit. That's the last straw, right? I want some food now. If you don't like it, you can take me back to the penitentiary and kiss my hungry black ass goodbye, all right?
Both are deeply flawed. They couldn't be more different, yet both make perfect sense within their own personal rules. The case itself is just a container, not the point. The relationship is what the audience is really there for.
Drop that goddamn gun!
Hey, man, it's a dangerous game you're playing, man. Don't point that gun at me, all right? Don't point your goddamn gun at me, all right?
Some of the film's best moments happen when the plot isn't really moving forward at all, but when the characters are just existing in the same space, bouncing off each other. 48 Hours set the template and nailed the tone. Audiences immediately understood it, and a new genre was born, the buddy cop comedy. The film pulled together everything that already worked: mismatched partners forced to cooperate, an interracial dynamic previously seen in the prior Wilder films, race, class, and attitude baked directly into the conflict.
Turn your back for a half hour and let me go get some pussy.
What for? Any man talks about women like you. Can't get it up anyhow.
I've been in prison for 3 years. My dick gets hard if the wind blows.
then added stronger character development and real-time pressure to ramp up the tension. There were police partnerships before 48 Hours, but this was the first film to fully realize what a body cop movie could be. It didn't just mix comedy and crime, it made the relationship the main attraction. To this day, this formula keeps getting reused and reshaped, but never truly reinvented, because it works. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Running Scared is another early example. Not everything works here, and the story does fall apart a bit, but there are genuinely great moments between the two leads.
Anything you do or say will be used against you. You have the right to an attorney.
Give me your guns, man.
No, you can have the cash, but we got to keep the guns.
Shit!
No, I don't want to be
You have the right to a
responsible for guns
continental
falling
breakfast.
into the hands of
You have
riffraff
the
such
right
as
to the
yourself.
beverage of your
They already
choice in the
got guns.
precinct.
Here they are not forced together and they like each other from the start, so there is less room for growth, but the chemistry carries the film, and whenever the plot takes a back seat, the movie shines.
I thought about being killed 1,000,000 times. Never believed it until Gonzalez.
If there's anything worse than dying young, it's dying young with money in the bank.
Beverly Hills Cop fits the mold perfectly, even expanding the dynamic into a trio. Eddie Murphy is clearly the lead here and gets the most screen time, but when all three characters are together, everything clicks. Each has a distinct personality, and while they don't fit together seamlessly at first, that's exactly the point. The plot forges them into a team, whether they like it or not. The sequel is still fun, but it loses some of that edge, because now they are already friends, the bonding is done, and we don't get to experience that process again. That's the thing with body comedies, you can usually only do them perfectly once. The second time around, the barriers are gone, the friendship is solid, and there is nowhere left to grow. It starts to feel comfortable, sometimes a little too comfortable. Unless, of course, you're Bud Spencer and Terence Hill, in which case you can repeat the formula more than a dozen times and still get away with it by simply changing the setting around them. The Lethal Weapon franchise is another iconic example of the genre, pairing two wildly different characters by force.
Hey, look, friend, let's just cut the shit. Now, we both know why I was transferred. Everybody thinks I'm suicidal, in which case I'm f***ed and nobody wants to work with me. Or they think I'm faking to draw a psycho pension, in which case I'm f***ed and nobody wants to work with me. Basically, I'm...
It's one of the purest expressions of the body cop formula and just shows how flexible the genre can be. On the surface, these are action movies, guns, chases, explosions, but the real engine is the relationship between Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh. Riggs and Murtaugh are a textbook mismatch. Riggs is reckless, emotionally shattered, and constantly pushing himself towards the edge, while Murtaugh is cautious, grounded, and desperately holding on to family life and stability. They don't just clash in personality, they represent two completely different ways of coping with life. What makes it work is that the humor never feels forced, it grows naturally out of who these characters are. Riggs pushes things too far, Murtaugh reacts, and the movie lets that rhythm play out. Over time, their relationship evolves. They stop just tolerating each other and slowly become something like family, and the cases themselves turn into little more than excuses to keep these two together. John Candy also teamed up with Eugene Levy in Armed and Dangerous. It's a classic case of two misfits pushed together by circumstance, built around that familiar authority versus chaos pairing. Honestly, the plot itself is pretty forgettable, but it only proves the point. The character interaction easily outweighs the mystery, and that's what makes the film work. Dragnet might not be as perfectly crafted than the other films on this list, but it still has all the hallmarks. Generational class, old school versus modern attitude, straight man versus white car dynamic, and the comedy comes from the tone and worldview differences. The case is again secondary to their interaction. Now we get to Midnight Run, where the chaos versus straight man contrast drives everything. The film even turns the casting itself into a mismatch on paper. It's the perfect serious actor plus comedy actor friction engine, and it works beautifully.
You just said you were hurt.
I'm not hurt.
You just said you were hurt.
I didn't say I was hurt. You said I was hurt.
I asked you if you were hurt, and you said, yeah, I'm hurt.
That's because you made me say it. You're starting to put words in my mouth.
Jack, you're a grown man. You have control over your own words.
You're goddamn right I do. So here come two words for you. Shut the f*** up.
The comedy doesn't come from gags, but from clashing personalities, arguments, reactions, and those perfectly timed awkward pauses. I could talk about this movie forever, I honestly just love it. The film also sneaks in a few secondary contrast pairings, like Tony and Joey, the two half-wit mobsters, or Eddie and Jerry back at the bondsman office.
Walsh got the Duke.
He got him! He got the Duke! No kidding?
This calls for a celebration. I'll get some donuts.
The formula works so well that the movie isn't afraid to use it multiple times whenever there is room. In the end, the plot becomes secondary here too. If the dynamics are strong enough, we could probably watch these guys go shopping and it would be still entertaining. Of course, the high stakes help, but the real joy is always the relationship. This might be the only buddy comedy where the pair doesn't end up together by choice or circumstance, and I can't help but wish the film had an alternative ending just for me, where these two open a restaurant together or something.
In the next life.
Yeah, the next life.
Tango and Cash is another strong illustration of the body formula pushed it to its extremes. It pairs two larger-than-life stars who share the screen without competing for dominance, leaning into contrast, banter and sheer personality to prove once again that when the chemistry works, the genre thrives, even at its most over-the-top. Even the Die Hard franchise, known for its one-man army logic, eventually leaned into the body formula with Die Hard with a Vengeance. It followed the rules, the chemistry was spot on, and it worked like a charm. The filmmakers liked that dynamic so much they tried to repeat it in every subsequent Die Hard film with, let's say, significantly less success. Hollywood even applied the formula to sci-fi classics like Back to the Future trilogy. Here, the dynamic is more of a mentor and chaos duo rather than two equals, but the verbal rhythm and reactive comedy are still very much there. And they work perfectly. And in the end, it's not the time travel plot or the visual effects that keep us coming back, but the emotional bond between the characters. Weekend at Bernie's is a great example of two equals trapped in an increasingly absurd shared situation. The entire movie runs on reactions, panic, denial, and constant escalation, while the so-called container does all the heavy lifting. The plot barely matters, it exists purely to keep these two guys together and push them into even more ridiculous scenarios, and somehow that's more than enough. Spies Like Us plays with a classic incompetence versus overconfidence dynamic.
These are our newly arrived surgeons, Doctors Trowbridge and Greenbaum.
Doctor?
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 These two are constantly bickering under mounting pressure, and the friendship doesn't come from success, but from shared failure.
Yeah, sure, that's us. We're doctors. I'm Dr. Trowbridge, and this is Dr.
Greenbaum. Greenbaumberg. We're doctors.
The stakes keep rising, but it's the chemistry that really carries the film, not the spy plot itself. Watching them mess things up together is the whole point. In the mid-90s, Chris Farley and David Spade teamed up in Tommy Boy and Black Sheep. It's a classic pairing of loud chaos and quiet restraint, with the road trip structure forcing the bond. The growth comes through mutual dependence, and both films make room for moments where the plot pauses so we can simply enjoy these two characters vibing together. After the 2000s, the era of classic buddy cop comedies seemed to fade, but the formula never really went away. Franchises like Rush Hour and Bad Boys proved that it still works and still connects with audiences when the chemistry is right. Even Edgar Wright tapped into the buddy comedy tradition with his Cornetto trilogy, pairing Simon Pegg and Nick Frost 3 times with barely any changes to their core characters. The dynamic stays the same, the differences remain intact, and only the genre and plot shifts around them. But why do we love buddy comedies? In an article from Elle magazine, Brian Van Hooker describes the classic mismatched buddy movie as essentially the male equivalent of a romantic comedy. The piece argues that these films follow familiar beats, two very different men forced together, bickering at first, then bonding, breaking apart, and eventually reuniting, mirroring the emotional arc of a rom-com but centered on male friendship. Another way to look at it is that the lasting appeal of these movies comes from how closely they reflect real struggles with male friendships, while also offering a kind of wish fulfillment, forming deep bonds through shared experiences, pressure and hardship. I agree with both of these ideas, but I think there is something even simpler at work. These films give us the chance to spend time with friends, even if they are not real. Once you've seen a movie a dozen times, the character starts to feel familiar, like old friends. At that point, it's no longer about what they are doing, it's about being with them. Everybody needs friends, and having the luxury to put on your favorite buddy comedy and feel that sense of warmth and connection, even if just for 90 minutes, is what really matters to me, and that's the reason why I love these films. If I missed a buddy comedy that you think should have been in this video, please share it in the comments, I would love to hear about it. Thanks for watching.